Welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is the last of our rugby preview videos for the 2024 MLR season, part 2 of the Western Conference. As we always like to say, save the best for last, and we have 3 teams that will be interesting to follow and watch in the Western Conference. If you saw part 1, and if you haven't, I highly recommend, obviously, watch part 1 before part 2. But as I mentioned before, the Western Conference definitely, I feel, going to be a lot more competitive than the Eastern Conference. Everyone in the Eastern Conference, I believe, is going to be chasing after New England and Chicago. In the Western Conference, I feel everyone's going to be chasing after San Diego, but it's a lot more of a closer race than between New England, Chicago, and the rest of the Eastern Conference. These 3 teams still have a very good chance of doing some spoiling, or at least moving their way into one of the 2. And I'm saying this even though we don't really know what the playoff situation is just yet in Major League Rugby. I do believe, because there are 12 teams, 6 in each division, are in conference, I believe they'll probably do the same playoff format as they did last year. The top 3 teams go into the playoffs. So San Diego, I feel, has almost a lock on spot number 1. So 2 and 3. Who's going to be in there? I feel almost all the teams have a decent shot at it. Even LA. And I know it sounds very biased, but I think they have a shot. And I'll explain why in just a little bit. But let's start with the first team that we're previewing in this video, Utah Warriors. Now, the Utah Warriors finished 4th place last season, just shy. Missed it 4 points behind of Houston. I know I might have said it wrong in the last video, but that's how it ended. Utah brings back Greg Cooper, New Zealand capped All Black, 3rd year as coach for Utah, and it's an interesting lookup of their roster. Not a lot has changed. I mean, they've obviously lost a couple of players. Yuri Van Buren is going over to the LA Rugby Football Club LA. Connor Burns going over to Miami. Calvin Whitting, unfortunately, retired. Lance Williams has moved back to Rugby 7. He may come back later in the season. We'll see. Henry Bell's gone over back to Australia to play for the Highlanders. Sam Buckley moved to NOLA. Sam Viogali moved to Chicago. Olive Khalifi retired, then unretired and go to Seattle. So who does Utah get? Well, Utah did pick up Robbie Povey. From the dispersal trade. Robbie Povey, as I mentioned in the last video, actually was traded from Houston to the Arrows. The Arrows are now defunct, so he got picked up in the dispersal trade. A very talented Canadian cap player, very strong fly half, so he can definitely make some noise here. Karen McLeod from New England. Interestingly enough, Utah traded their 2nd round pick in the 2024 draft for him, and then they also traded their 1st round 2024 pick for Spencer Jones, also from New England, Canadian national. So basically, Utah kind of going all in, trading both of their 2024 picks for these 2 players. So obviously they feel that there's something with them. That's why they traded some valuable stock for the future in these players for now. Nick Soshan from Old Glory, hooker coming over. Luis Conradi usually plays for Verblitz in Japan, a South African player coming over to Utah. And then Zach Barker from the Utah Selects, their academy program, graduating up to the Utah main team. Gabriel Mahuenga, he was actually picked up by NOLA, 6th overall pick in the draft. 11th overall pick, 1st round pick in the draft by NOLA, was then traded to Utah for a dispersal pick, which then Utah traded that to Chicago to then grab Nate Osberger from from New York. So Gabriel Mahuenga, almost like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, if you're old enough to figure that out and understand that reference. Kudos to you. But Gabriel Mahuenga somehow involved in that. A young, talented prospect for Utah. But that's pretty much who they just got. And then re-signing, of course, very talented Joel Hodgson, formerly of the Saints and Falcons in the Premier Rugby Championship. Fly half, 122 points scored last season, 5 tries. 3rd top point scorer last season. Huge get for Utah. Joe Mono, 14 tries last season. Top try scorer tied with Paula Balanenka. Kayla McKinney, 6 tries, fullback. Mika Kruse, super talented player, 6 tries, center. And then, of course, Paul Mullins, a very talented prop. Isaiah Kruse, the brother to Mika Kruse. And then Angus McClellan, another talented prop. So, yeah, that's Utah's squad. Not a lot of changes. So, I mean, they came just short of Houston. I think Houston has increased quite a bit with the adding of AJ Alatimu. And I know that's, I mean, it seems I'm putting a lot of stock in AJ Alatimu, but I believe AJ Alatimu is that good. And being behind David Coutier, I mean, you have 2 of the top point scorers in Major League Rugby last season on the same team. And they're both talented, phenomenal players. You can have them trade off back and forth to start, and Houston is just going to be a real team to reckon with. I don't see Utah making too many changes, so Utah, I feel, kind of gets pushed back because of that. So I don't know, like I said, I think maybe Houston should actually go up a spot and be competing for that second spot, and maybe Utah and Seattle are fighting for third. We'll see, but yeah, that's Utah. Utah, though, surprisingly enough, they're always that weird team that they tend to win games that maybe they shouldn't have and lose obvious games that they should have won. So we'll see what happens with Utah. Now let's talk about the Dallas Jackals. No longer the new kids on the block. They've been replaced by 3 other teams, including one team that's also in the Western Conference with them, Rugby Football Club LA. But Dallas, only 2 wins, but their first 2 wins of their franchise history last year came in last place. But interestingly enough, we're actually 1 point away from finishing 5th, just behind Chicago. So Dallas, I really felt Dallas had the makings of a very strong team. Definitely, as we mentioned, a very Argentinian-style team, flavored team, because, of course, their coach is Agustin Cavallari, former Argentinian coach and player. This will be his 2nd year along with the Dallas Jackals franchise being 2 years old. But I feel they have the potential to win quite a few more games this year. Because a lot of the core of the team is still intact together. Obviously, of course, they did lose a couple players. Conrad Aurora's gone. One of the most talented players I felt that they had, Eric Damposki, first-round pick in the 2021 draft, going over to Miami. They traded Danny Christensen over to San Diego for Joelle Tikivosiva. They also gave away James Valifau to San Diego. Connor Grendel's going over to LA. They also lost Adrian Buisen, who is a very talented Argentinian player. And then Marcus Moroni is not on the roster. Don't know what happened to him. Possibly he's going to play for Argentinian Sevens, which right now the Argentinian Sevens team is phenomenal. They are just really an unstoppable force to play against. But Geronimo Govez Vara's still there, Argentinian prop, as well as a very talented center, Thomas Milana. Now, who did they bring back? Brock Gallagher is a huge signing for Dallas. If you watch PR7s, the Major League Sevens competition here in the United States, Brock Gallagher is a talented Canadian Sevens player who basically was voted MVP of the 2022 season. Phenomenal talent, exciting player to watch. This will be his first 15s competition that he's playing for, and that's a huge get, I feel, for Dallas. Pedro Imhoff, a scrum half from Argentina, good get for them as well. Evan Conlon, basically, they picked him up. He was Atlanta's 3rd-round pick in the 2022 MLR draft, 35th overall, graduate of Lindenwood. For him, they gave now LA their 3rd-round pick, 2024 3rd-round pick for him. Interestingly enough, they also picked up Ronan Foley, who they gave Seattle their 2024 2nd-round pick. So similar to Utah, Dallas is giving away their picks for both Evan Collin and Ronan Foley, 2 players that apparently they're investing a lot into now and not so much into the future. Ben Fry from the Dragons over in Europe, and Vahan Isaacs from the Lions from South America. Both of them are South Africa. Both of them are coming over to Dallas, first time playing in Major League Rugby. Damian Torres. This is a great get for Dallas. Kind of disappointing that he didn't come over to LA, formerly of Rugby ATL. Talented back row player. And then Marcus Muller, formerly the Cheetahs, another South African player coming over to Dallas. So a lot of new international blood for Dallas. And of course, players that they're re-signing. Sam Gala, Your rookie of the year last year, talented player, #1 overall pick in the 2022 draft, re-signed. If you watch the current Eagles team that played last year, Sam Gala was a phenomenal player. Just a couple of caps into his career, he's been amazing. Martin Elias, top point scorer for Dallas, fly half, he's come back. Juan Paulo Zeiss, young Argentinian prop, is back. And then, of course, Mitchie Richardson from Toronto, a Canadian national, is now with the team as well. So, Dallas, I feel, they brought back a lot of core players, brought in a very exciting player like Brock Gallagher. I don't know if they'll be a lock-in for sure for playoffs, but definitely, I feel, will improve on that 2-14 record. Like, more so, I think they'll even surpass 4 wins in a very competitive Western Conference. Now, last but not least, let's talk about LA. As you guys know, LA native, it broke my heart when the LA Guiltinis were disbanded, when that franchise closed. As much as I enjoyed Major League Rugby last season, there was kind of this little hole in my heart that we didn't have an LA team. But now we do. Welcome the Rugby Football Club LA. Very, very excited to be a member of that. I already have my deposit for season tickets. Might have some interesting stuff to work with, some collaboration with LA. I'll keep you posted about that in the future. But LA now playing no longer at the Coliseum, which was honestly too big of a venue for a rugby team to start playing in. But now playing at Dignity Health Sports Park, which in itself is still pretty big. 27,000 makes it one of the biggest stadiums right now in Major League Rugby. Home of the LA Galaxy, home to the LA Galaxy 2. There's a little bit of rumor whether or not LA is going to play in the actual main stadium in Dignity Health Sports Park, or if they're going to play in the track and field stadium, which is the smaller field, which only holds about 2,000. Makes more sense if they do that. Well, we'll see. We'll see when the game starts in a couple of weeks. Head coach for LA is basically the Atlanta franchise moving over to LA. So the head coach of Atlanta now moves over to the head coach of LA, Stephen Brett, a New Zealander, a former rugby player himself. Phenomenal player, played for the Crusaders, but he made his mark with the Blues. In just 2 years playing for the Blues, he scored 191 points. That makes him the 11th highest scoring player in Blues history of all time. His 141 points played in one season in the Blues is 5th all time in the history of Blues of players playing for one season. And he had 26 points in one match. That's the 3rd highest of any Blues player to score that many points in one match. So Stephen Brett knows a couple of things about scoring points and attacking and being very offensive. He took over as the head coach of Atlanta in 2022 after Scott Lawrence stepped down, and now Scott Lawrence, of course, is the current USA Eagles head coach, and he's been phenomenal in trying to rebuild the Eagles base and really focusing on building up top-notch rugby caliber players in the United States. Granted, Stephen Brett took over an Atlanta franchise after 1 year making it to the finals of Major League Rugby, which is funny and ironic enough because the team that beat them in the finals was the LA Guiltinis. But then the following year after that, finished last, or finished 5th place last season, 5-10-1. So it's odd the drop off from finishing in 2nd to 5th, but we'll see what happens this season. And again, as I mentioned before, there is some notes of optimism. LA did play a preseason game just recently against Utah in Utah, and they slaughtered Utah 34-7. Now, granted, preseason. We don't really know who's playing in what capacity, but the fact that LA was able to beat a team that has a lot of experience in Utah, I mean, that's phenomenal. So I'm feeling a lot more optimistic than I originally felt. I really did feel, and I'll talk about this when I talk about my early prediction video, I didn't expect LA to do very much, being the new kids on the block. I mean, again, I've talked about this in prior videos. You see the routine, you see the way that it works. New teams comes in, they have horrible starts. Dallas didn't win their first game until the following season. Chicago only finished with 3 wins in their first season. The only one that kind of broke the mold was the LA Guillotines, and they won a championship in their very first year. Now, I'm not saying LA is going to do that, but I definitely feel that LA might have the potentials to be contenders. Maybe even really fight off Dallas for that number 3 spot in the playoffs. I wouldn't be surprised. The team itself is pretty balanced between veteran and new players. Now, granted, again, a lot of these players haven't really played together. Some of them do come from the Atlanta background, so they have some sort of continuity with each other. Some of them have played for the Tel Aviv Heat, the very first Israeli team that the management of the Tel Aviv Heat is the same management that opened up the LA franchise, so they brought a couple players over. But it's only a couple players, and again, the overall scope of the team, it's a lot of new players playing together for the very first time. But, I mean, again, it's a very good-looking team on paper. Let's start with Alex Mahan. 3-time capped Eagle, hooker, 6 tries he scored in 2023, so he is going to be a phenomenal player. I feel he's going to be a leader on the field. Yuri Van Vuren, South African lock, a number 8 player, played for Utah, also plays for the Tel Aviv Heat. In 2021, he scored 6 tries for Utah. Dan Hollinshead. He's the guy that I'm really excited. Coming back to Major League Rugby. New Zealander, fly half, played for New York, and was one of the top point scorers during the 2021 season. Phenomenal off the tee. He is a veteran leader that I feel will do a lot for LA. And then backing behind him is Jordan Chait, a talented young fly half, South African player coming from Seattle. Like I mentioned before in the Seattle video, he was pushing AJ Alatimu for that starting position in Seattle. So the fact that Jordan Tate, who scored 72 points last season, was phenomenal off the tee, 27 for 31. He is the backup to Dan Hollinshead. I mean, that's going to be phenomenal for Jordan to learn behind a guy like a veteran like Hollinshead. But the fact that if Hollinshead needs to rest, you have a phenomenal talent like Jordan Chait as the backup. And then to make things even better, we have a third guy that can kick, Jason Emery from the New York Ironworkers coming over. Talented New Zealand center. He scored 75 points last season, 21 for 28 off the tee. So if we need someone to kick and Hollinshead and Chait aren't up for it, we can easily throw in Jason Emery. And then, of course, Andrew Coe, another phenomenal player from New York, Canadian national, played in the 2019 Rugby World Cup, 6 tries last year for New York, fullback. I mean, our backs are going to be phenomenal on this team. Then you got some very interesting players that I'm excited to see. Max Kachichigeko, he is a flanker and a lock, a Namibian player. 29 caps. He played in the 2024 World Cup. Also plays for the Tel Aviv Heat. That's how he came over. And then Semi Kunatani, the flying Fijian player, number 8. He has 7s and 15s experience playing for the Fijian national team. He played in the recent World Cup, and he also is a Olympic gold medalist playing for the Fiji 7s team in 2016 when they won the gold medal in the Rio Olympics. So those two phenomenal players. And then Matt Heaton. Probably, I mean, he was awarded, or at least unofficially he was awarded man of the match in the preseason game against Utah. But I think Matt Heaton's going to be a phenomenal leader on the field. A Canadian cap player, was awarded the Canadian Player of the Year for Canadian Rugby a couple years back. Plays both 15s, 7s, played in the 2019 Rugby World Cup, formerly of the Arrows, coming over to LA. He's going to be phenomenal. And then, of course, Jason Dom, coming over from Rugby ATL. He was always a phenomenal presence on the ATL team. He's going to be number 8, graduate of the University of Clemson, and he capped Eagle. And then I'm excited for this for personal reasons. Taz Smith, coming back to LA, formerly of the LA Guillotines, was a member of the USA Under-20s team. This is the first time he's playing in Major League Rugby since the Guillotines disbanded, so it's great to see him back in LA. And then we have some young players that are going to be trying out Major League Rugby, pretty much being in the starting position for the first time. Matt Galehouse, he was the number 10 draft pick overall in the first round in the 2022 draft by the Rugby ATL from Kutztown. Seth Purdy, Canadian, he was the 4th overall draft pick in 2022 draft by ATL. Matt Antisef from Dartmouth, he was the 5th overall pick in the 2023 draft. And then Sam Walsh, Cal Bear, he has some sevens experience on the USA Sevens team. He is a Rudy Schultz finalist. He is on the LA team as well. So, again, the LA team, I mean, not being biased about it, but I think they might have some potential to at least really fight Dallas, possibly Utah, to not be in last place for that, maybe that third spot. So again, it's going to be a very, very cool competition to see between almost all the teams in the Western Conference. Like, they all have a shot at least the number 3 playoff spot. Utah, Houston, Seattle might have been downgraded a little bit, and then LA, and Dallas. I mean, Western Conference is going to be really, really exciting to watch. I feel definitely is going to be the more competitive of the two conferences. And San Diego has the opportunity to be a very dominant team. They finished last year as the best team in the league. I don't see any reason why they can't be the best team in the league this year again. So we'll see, but makes things very, very exciting. So again, thank you very much for watching my video. Don't forget, with Major League Rugby back, we do have the Super Brew Pick'em, the Rugby411 Super Brew Pick'em game. Again, absolutely free to join. I'll put the information in the comments, in the description video below. Easy to join. All you have to do is download the Super Brew app. It's absolutely free, but there is a prize for the top player. All you got to do is you got to pick the winner of each game throughout the entire Major League Rugby season. It's very simple. Even if you don't really follow Major League Rugby just yet, or you're kind of getting into it, it's real easy to just pick who you think's going to win. Top player during the regular season wins a MLR t-shirt of the team of their choice, courtesy of yours truly. And I really do hope I do better this season and try to get that top spot. But again, I think it's going to be very fun. We have 10 players signed up right now, hoping to get to 20. And that was what we had last season, trying to get over that. So we'll see. But join. It's a lot of fun, very easy to play, and we'll be keeping track of that all season. Coming up for videos, I got of course, my all too early predictions on where teams are going to finish in the season. See if I get it right. See if I'm completely wrong like I was last season, where I thought the New England Free Jacks were not going to make it to the playoffs. Again, you got a guy like Jason Poitras, it changes everything. But yeah, so we got that video. We got my, of course, first week preview. That will be dropping right before the start of the season. We might have a couple of other cool collaborations coming up. I'll keep you posted on that. But as always, thank you very much for watching my video. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you think the LA team will do well? I know there's quite a few LA haters out there. Hopefully we'll have a lot more LA lovers like myself that will be commenting the video below. Do you think Utah will make a run for it? Do you think Dallas will get more? I believe, I said they'll win 2 games last season. They did win 2 games last season. I'm now predicting they might win 4. We'll see. It's going to be very hard. It's going to be very competitive, but it will be a very, very good competition in the Western Conference. So, again, one more time, thank you very much for watching my video, and I'll see you on the pitch.